I love Chris Brown. No matter what you say about him, you don't feel bad. The last month or so has seen some fascinating new developments in the story of the lovable boy next door R&B crooner who, 3 years ago, revealed himself to be in reality a horrible woman-beating monster straight out of a bad Lifetime channel TV movie. Though many predicted his career was over, Brown eventually worked his way back into the limelight, mostly by simply refusing to go away, making his comeback official with a mega successful 2011, culminating with his 2 performances at the 2012 Grammys where he won the award for Best R&B Album.
Team Breezy, man, it's all for you, man. All my fans back home, I love y'all. So, we got one. Thank you.
Chris Brown clearly saw his Grammy as the triumphant ending of a personal redemption arc, in which he finally achieved both validation from the industry and forgiveness in the eyes of the public after years of hard work. And yet, at the end of it, he found himself more controversial than ever, and at the barrel end of more hate than he'd experienced since when the assault was fresh in people's minds. Why is that? Well, I probably shouldn't speculate, but I imagine that part of it comes from how he immediately announced his victory on Twitter in, shall we say, less than gracious terms. Hate all you want because I got a Grammy now. That's the ultimate fuck off. Well, you can see why people got mad. How dare he suggest that people should care about Grammys?
This is a boy, he has apologized so many times.
But in a backlash to the backlash, Chris Brown has also had a number of people crawl out of the woodwork to say that he's done his time and it's been 3 years and he's such a role model and people just need to move on. Maybe they're right. Maybe they have a point. Maybe we should. And I say that regardless of whether Chris Brown genuinely deserves forgiveness or not. Believe me, I, like most sane people, feel my stomach turn when I think about what he did, and I don't want to support domestic abuse or anything. But if I were to follow that logic, how many of my own records would I have to throw out? Because if I know anything about artists and entertainers, it's this. Most of them are horrible people. Yeah, you would be shocked if you knew all the terrible things that this man, or this man, or this man, or this man have done. Believe me, you'll never listen to Rainbow Connection the same way again. So, if you don't want to go insane, eventually, yeah, you do have to move on, even after you find out these things. I mean, I still listen to Phil Spector's music, he straight up killed a girl. Like, what I'm saying is, I would be happy to put the horrible assault that Chris Brown committed out of my mind. See, here's the thing, though. He won't let me. Even if I didn't follow the entertainment news and find out about every horrible thing he does or says, I'm still a music critic. I've listened to his music. And even just judging him on the thing that he's supposed to be famous for, he's one of the stupidest, most repulsive people I've ever heard sing a note. Whether it be on the ugly, misogynistic deuces, the repugnantly arrogant look at me now, the narcissistic plea for forgiveness changed man, or just the fact that his latest album was called Forgiving All My Enemies. Yes. Chris Brown has magnanimously forgiven you for all your transgressions against him. Don't even worry about trying to make it up to him. He understands. That's really what makes Chris Brown so awful, his utter refusal to really own up to what he did. I mean, he gets that he made a mistake, a slip up, a whoopsie daisy. But I don't think he gets the extent of it, seeing as he's decided that he's apologized enough already and he's not going to embarrass himself any further. God, can you imagine the embarrassment of actually making more than one apology for, oh, let me read this here. Shoving Rihanna's face into a window, then punching her in the eye, then repeatedly punching her in the face till her mouth filled with blood, threatening to beat her more when they got home, and then when she called someone for help, he threatened to kill her. And then he kept punching her repeatedly in the arm she was using to protect her head, threw her phone out the window, and when she went for his phone, he put her in a headlock and choked her until she almost passed out, and also started biting her on the ear. That's all in the past. He's back in the big time, baby. And despite all the controversy, his latest song from his upcoming album, Fortune, has debuted in the top 10. So let's look at his new single, Turn Up the Music. Turn up the music 'cause the song... Actually, you know what? Let's not, because I don't give a crap. This is going to be a different episode for me, because Brown's music is by far the least interesting thing about the whole ordeal, so you want to know what I think about this song? Really fast, here it is. It's by the numbers, put your hands in the air club music that we already have way too much of, and Chris Brown's performance is only notable because of the severe lack of personality he brings to it. As a singer, Chris Brown is a really good dancer, but other than that, he doesn't do anything that any other R&B star could not. I mean, you give the song to Taio Cruz, what changes? Nothing. Now, Michael Jackson was accused of some pretty awful things too, but even if it turns out it was all true, we can still admit that a world without Michael would have been a drastically different one, right? What would have changed if Chris Brown hadn't been around? What is it people find so inspiring about this mediocre little turd ball? And I say that as someone who can safely say that, yeah, I like a couple Chris Brown songs. Forever, I think. That's a good song. And there are a couple others I like too, so you know what? I get there are people who really, really like him as a singer. But why do they like him as a person? I have seen him defended by so many of his near-illiterate fans who keep expecting you to just forget that it happened. He's moved on with his life. That was like 3 years ago. Leave Chris Brown alone. Doesn't everyone deserve a second chance? No. Some people can earn a second chance. Now, take a look at Michael Vick, who was arrested in 2007 for running an illegal dogfighting ring.
He was sentenced to 2 years in prison and eventually declared bankruptcy.
Since then, he's spoken on behalf of the Humane Society, he speaks to middle school kids about animal welfare, he's lobbied for harsher penalties for animal fighting, and he's worked hard to keep his image clean since then. Does that make up for what he did? Is he genuinely remorseful? Does he deserve forgiveness? I don't know. All I know is I can't think of anything else I could reasonably ask him to do. Chris Brown, meanwhile, got a slap on the wrist and has spent his time as a free man making homophobic insults, whining about people not liking him, and throwing chairs out of windows. What I'm saying is, Chris Brown hasn't earned a second chance. He hasn't earned anything better than a cannonball being fired directly into his nuts. And at this point, it's not even the felony he committed, it's the fact that he's learned nothing from it.
I mean, it's not really a big deal to me now as far as that situation. I think I'm past that in my life.
Now, I don't like the idea of making a person pay for one mistake for their entire lives, but when they're so completely dedicated to being a douchebag in public, what else can you do except blast him remorselessly?
Seriously, you say a few hateful things, they don't let you within 100 yards of the Oscars. You could literally beat the shit out of a nominee. They ask you to perform twice at the Grammys.
Now, in recent weeks, quite a few celebrities have taken shots at Chris Brown, and one of the most interesting was WWE superstar CM Punk, who made a crack about beating him up on Twitter. Now, I don't understand why Chris Brown's publicists allow him to even have a Twitter. But I can tell you this much, it's a comedy gold mine. Now, normally he'll just tweet his release dates or a bunch of disingenuous things about growth and positivity, but every once in a while he'll also post yet another stupid ass thought and respond to haters. And so Chris, in a display of the maturity he has so thoroughly embodied in the past few years, tweeted back at Mr. Punk, CM Punk needs more followers, not to mention the roids he's on made it utterly impossible for him pleasure a woman. Yeah! Eat some of Chris Brown's positivity and growth, CM Punk. Psh, look at that over-muscled roid freak. Burn, man. But the feud made me realize something that made Chris Brown's behavior incredibly clear to me. He's a wrestling villain. I don't know why I didn't realize it before. It's all there. The worthless apologies.
I apologize, you son of a bitch.
The constant temper tantrums.
I work my ass off every single night for these damn fans.
The infuriatingly phony messages of positivity. Seriously, he's 2 seconds away from insulting the town he's performing in. He's the greatest heel the WWE has ever seen. I certainly haven't had this much fun hating someone since back when I watched wrestling, and apparently I'm not the only one.
So I saw this tweet and I retweeted it adding, "You spelled punching wrong."
I've discovered there are people who use Twitter basically just to come up with hilarious comebacks to Chris Brown's every stupid thought, and it has produced some of the finest 140 character comedy I've ever seen. Like when Chris Brown indignantly tweeted, "I'm so over everyone's opinions." This one guy responded, "Yeah, you're sick of opinions like, no Chris, stop, it hurts." And when he tweeted, "Just took a photograph of the lady fan and boy her man was super mad," some guy responded, "He loves her and was afraid for her safety." It's like the best caption contest that ever existed, and I started following Chris Brown too solely so I could join in. Like here where he said, "Happy Valentine's Day, ladies, let today be about you." And I wrote this witty comeback in response. Chris Brown is a worthless piece of dog shit. Obviously, I need to work on mine a little. Fortunately, there are other people out there to do it for me, but unfortunately, every time I try and look for these hilarious responses, I can't find them. Because if you do a search for Chris Brown, you get a flood of Chris Brown's delusional supporters telling him what a great person he is, and what a positive role model he is. Chris Brown, the guy, that...
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
I didn't know this, but apparently Twitter is an even more wretched hive of scum and idiocy than YouTube comments. I mean, I knew Chris Brown is a bad man, but his fans, they're the worst. The very worst. They don't just forgive him for beating up a tiny 19-year-old girl. They'll actively deny that he did anything wrong. A bunch of my viewers sent me that picture with all the tweets of women saying they would let Chris Brown punch them in the face. Okay, I think a number of them were joking. And even if they weren't, at least they acknowledge that Chris Brown did in fact once punch a woman in the face. Believe me, people, that's not the worst thing I've seen from Team Breezy. There's worse.
I'm just saying, like, okay, yeah, I shouldn't deserve to get beat up to the degree she got beat up.
I don't believe that Chris Brown just attacked Rihanna for nothing. I believe she provoked him.
I have seen so many awful excuses that blame Rihanna for being hit in the face. I've heard people say that she hit him first, that she gave him an STD, that she endangered their lives by making him swerve in traffic, that she started taking chunks out of him with a shoe. None of which there's any actual evidence for, not from Rihanna, or Chris Brown, or the police report, or anything. And speaking of the police report, do I have to read you this thing again? He bit her in the ear and choked her. Could I believe that whatever Rihanna did in the car to start the fight could justify what Chris Brown did? Yeah, if she was attacking him with a chainsaw, or maybe if she had been possessed by Satan and Brown's fists were the only thing that could drive him out. Other than that, probably not. Oh, and here's another thing I hear. Rihanna forgave him, so let it go already. Okay, yeah, about that. Yes, Chris Brown has shown up on some of Rihanna's newest remixes, and she's shown up on the remix for Turn Up the Music, and yes, it's hard to see that as anything but a public act of forgiveness. I'm not really comfortable criticizing the choices of an abuse victim, but yeah, I do think that collaborating with him publicly sends the wrong message, and I wish Rihanna had followed the example of another person who found herself in that situation.
These are young girls. I couldn't be held responsible for telling them go back. Chris, even if Chris never hit me again, who's to say that their boyfriend won't?
But that's not my business. If Rihanna forgave him, fine. But that doesn't have a thing to do with if I forgive him. Hell, he didn't do anything to me. No one's really asking me to forgive him. They're asking me to like him. No, denied. If Chris Brown was just some famous scumbag, that'd be one thing, but I was doing all this research online and I just kept reading all these sickening posts trying to make excuses for what he did.
That heifer is lying, okay? She's a liar.
There's just so many of them and they're everywhere and I couldn't take it anymore. I got so sick of it that I did something I promised myself I would never do. I started a Tumblr. It is at trollingchrisbrown.tumblr.com, where I collect all the hilarious responses to Chris Brown's stupidity that I can find. I'm going to keep running it until the act of running a hate blog becomes too exhausting and sad, but for Chris Brown, I don't think that's going to end anytime soon. Like, originally it was going to be up just for the sake of comedy, but after reading all these stupid people, this stopped being about the lulz. It's about the fact that instead of trying to earn forgiveness, Chris Brown and the dumber members of Team Breezy got indignant that you won't let go of the fact that he put a woman in the hospital. Well, screw that. I encourage everybody, go ahead and troll Chris Brown yourselves, and if you see a funny one somewhere, please, go ahead and submit it to the site. Send me your pictures, links, whatever, and if it's funny, we'll put it up. Yeah, it's just a small drop in the bucket, but the whole Chris Brown phenomenon is such a depressing mess. We gotta get some enjoyment out of this somehow. Like, if people want to buy Chris Brown's music, fine, it's just music. But quite frankly, the idea of Chris Brown only getting attention from his fans makes me want to puke. Chris Brown, that fucking face right in his piece of wad mother.
You look so dumb right now.